If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed. What is the long-term effect of too much information?
Information, I just need some information. I've been dying. Is it lack of education? I've been reading without any transformation. I'm addicted. Is it overstimulation? Hey.
Welcome to the Sixth Sense Report.
Hear ye, come one, come all. You are listening to the Sixth Sense Report with Joel Nikoloff and Darnell Samuels.
It's that time of the week again, bro.
Another
Gotta
episode.
give our 2 cents.
So what are we talking about today, Joel?
We're talking about your boy, Jagmeet Singh.
Nah, that's not my boy. Not that for anybody who's gonna misconstrue, they're like, oh, what? He doesn't like brown people? Oh, no. I love brown people. I'm all about brown privilege. But in regards
black
to
privilege, I thought it was, bro.
No. I mean brown privilege. I live in Brampton.
Oh.
Right? I live in Brampton, right? So,
Where you're a minority?
I'm a minority among minorities. I'm a minority among the majority minority.
Yo, straight up, I don't know I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm not sure. Am I a minority in Brampton?
That statistically I don't know, but as a black male living among brown people, I'm definitely the majority in Brampton. And I use the term brown privilege because brown people have done well for themselves in Canada, especially in Brampton, in creating an industrious infrastructure for their people. They got a hand in everything. Like my favorite pizza place to go to is Pizza Depot. My physio lady is Indian. One time I was out of work and I was going to different agencies to find work, and I went to one that was owned by Indian people, and I filled out my application and handed it in, and I was basically, when I handed it in, I told him, look, man, I'm desperate, like I need something, and I was the only black guy in there, and on the spot he just said, okay. He's like, I can help you, and he found me a job the very next day. Now, mind you, when I went to the workplace, it was predominantly Indian guys running it, and they didn't refer to me by my name. They just said, hey buddy, hey pick that up, buddy, go do that, buddy, things, and they were telling the black people what to do. Felt like brown supremacy. but technically, honestly, you know what? Indian people are a beautiful people because I work with them. Like I said, I go everywhere and they're there and they're always kind to me. So, and I know Indian people I know they have their bad apples. Just like black people just like black people have their bad apples, but I don't judge Indian people based on their bad apples. I judge them on their good apples, and I hope hopefully they judge me the same way.
In general, there's always bad people, right? Like, I mean,
yeah, but sometimes there's a lot of bad people.
Well, I mean, like Joe Rogan has get a pretty good joke or he uses a punchline, but basically what he says is like, out of 100 people, like 3 of them are idiots, right? Like the problem is, when you only see the idiots because the idiots are the loudest ones in the bunch, right? And so like it's always possible for, a small group of people to give, a greater to misrepresent people that. Whether it's they look like them or they play the same sport as them or whatever it is, right? Like if you're only listening to, if you're judging people based on, what seems to be the worst possible version of of that group of people, well, chances are that's because they are the worst possible version of that group of people. So, I mean, I digress, but my point is, I would say people are beautiful, right? Like, I come across people of every, ethnicity, and I can't say to you that there's one ethnicity that I generally find, a negative interaction with.
Well, speak for yourself.
Okay.
Speak for yourself, bro.
Well, my point is,
I go to Ample and, sometimes they ain't dealing with me right. Or Oceans, you know what I mean? So it is what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean,
That's right.
but I granted, anytime there's a language barrier, it's hard to decipher what.
No, I'm not talking language, bro. I'm talking some other stuff, man. I'm talking about some social justice stuff, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Okay.
All right, so who is Jagmeet Singh?
We'll go there on the next episode.
On the next episode. All right, so who is Jagmeet Singh? So Jagmeet Singh was born January 2nd, 1979. He's professionally known as Jagmeet Singh. That's Jagmeet, not Jagmeet. Get his name right. Put some respect on his name. So it's Jagmeet. So he's a Canadian lawyer and politician, serving as the leader of the New Democratic Party since 2017.
And as his Twitter profile says, it's pronounced jug meat like hug.
Right. And also some of his career highlights. He's been featured in GQ magazine for his fly attire. So Jagmeet Singh is a swaggy kind of guy. Mad, he's got mad drip.
That's why I said he's your people,
crazy.
bro.
Huh?
That's why I said he's your people.
Oh yeah, okay. If you mean like Jagmeet's fly and I'm fly, or birds of a feather fly and flock together, then yeah, okay, Jagmeet's my people. But yeah, so he's a pretty down to earth guy. A lot of people like him. Very socially aware. But we want to talk about an interview that he did, and where he was asked about his beliefs as a Sikh. So, yes, he wears a turban and rocks the beard. And so basically they were asking him about his beliefs as a person of the Sikh faith and how that meshes with his political beliefs. So we're going to play a clip from that interview and then jump back into it.
Mr. Shear has been asked about his personal religious views, and there's a lot of debate whether that's relevant. Does he believe being gay or homosexuality is a sin? He wouldn't give a straight answer. He said he'll protect the rights of all Canadians. You're a religious Sikh. Let me ask you the same question, if that's now fair territory to ask him. Do you, as a religious person, believe that being gay is a sin? Do you support same-sex marriage?
Yes. I don't think it's a sin, and I support it all the way.
And same on abortion choice?
Absolutely, without any question.
And so does that jibe? How do you balance that with your personal religious beliefs or your religion's beliefs and your personal beliefs?
They're completely in line. My beliefs spiritually are fully in line with the supporting same-sex marriage, supporting a woman's right to choose. I have no any sort of ambiguity with my personal spiritual beliefs.
I'm asking you because that's a new thing here in Canada. Is it fair to ask leaders what's your personal belief, even though we have religious freedom to believe what we want?
I think people should believe what they want. I think it gives people confidence. In my case, people can be very confident that both my spiritual, my personal, my beliefs as a leader are all in line with my values, which are to support a woman's right to choose, which is to support same-sex marriage, which is the fight for equality and fairness for Canadians.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's an aspect where this, I don't want to say him, but the interview, from CTV News, is trying to, or maybe not trying is not the right word, but to some extent they're showing, how does his belief system or his religion differ from Christianity.
And Andrew Scheer's comments as a Christian in regards to the same-sex marriage and abortions. So that's what the conversation was in comparison to. But yeah, go ahead.
So I think the simplest way of what I'm trying to get at is there's a view that they believe that God and creation are really one. So things like karma, reincarnation, come in line with their belief system. And so, what's and this is slightly dated. What I'm about to share is so in 2005, the World Sikh Group came out against the gay marriage bill in Canada, and the claim within the article basically said, warning it is against Sikh code and the laws of nature. And I've actually read some stuff similarly with respect to abortion, that, abortion is against the laws of nature. So basically, it seems that it's not. The reason I bring these up is to, and actually the thing about abortion, I actually saw in the Twitter feed, someone had kind of posted it saying, a deeper look at the subject would have been interesting, because they shared something from BBC UK, which is from the UK, that basically abortion is generally forbidden in Sikhism, as it interferes in the creative work of God, But and then it finishes this article or this little blurb that despite this theoretical viewpoint, abortion is not uncommon among the Sikh community. So I only bring that up to say that it seems that within the Sikh community, around gay marriage and abortion, it's not as clean as he made it seem. Now, it sounds like his beliefs are clean, which I'm not by any means raising any doubts on that. It just seems that he presented them in such a way that, like, oh yeah, no, this is straightforward. Yeah, my beliefs are, in line with, that the religious beliefs are totally exactly as he's described them. And it just seems a little bit, I don't want to say misleading because that's not the right word. But it seems like it's a deeper discussion that he made it sound like.
Yeah, that's good, Joel. That's good. And also, there was a comment made by Dr. Tony Costa, who was on episode 53, Biblical Social Justice 101. And he said, and he posed the comment, can Jagmeet Singh confirm whether any Gurdwaras in Canada perform same-sex marriage? Gurdwaras being Sikh temples. And I'm assuming the answer is no, but it's definitely something to think about. Well, what is Sikhism? Sikhism is a monotheistic religion. It is the 5th largest organized religion in the world. Number of followers estimated between 20 and 30 million. It was founded in the 16th century in the Indian region of Punjab. Sikhism was founded by Guru Nanak, 1469 to 1539. That's the guy they're trying to rename the street Peter Robinson after. It was based on the teachings. It was based on his teachings and those of the 9 Sikh gurus who followed him. Sikhs believe that all subsequent gurus possessed Guru Nanak's divinity and religious authority. These gurus each contributed to the Sikh holy scripture. It was called the Guru Granth Sahib. Gobind Singh, 1666 to 1708. The 10th Guru decreed that after his death, the spiritual guide of the Sikhs would be the teachings contained in the Guru Granth Sahib. Ever since, the book has been regarded by Sikhs as a living guru, and Sikhs show it the same respect they would give to a human guru. Guru Granth Sahib is compiled from the writings of Sikh gurus, Hindus, and Muslims' beliefs. Sikhism stresses the importance of doing good actions rather than merely carrying out rituals. Sikhs believe that the way to lead a good life is to keep God in heart and mind at all times. Live honestly and work hard. Treat everyone equally. Be gracious to the less fortunate and serve others. The community of men and women who have been initiated into the Sikh faith is the Khalsa. The Khalsa is said to be the 11th guru of the Sikhs, with Guru Granth Sahib as its soul. Members of the Khalsa are identified by 5 symbols, the 5 Ks. Kesh, uncut hair. Kanga, a wooden comb. Kara, a metal bracelet. Kacha, which is the cotton underwear. And the Kirpan, a ceremonial sword or dagger. The word Sikh in the Punjabi language means disciple. Sikhs are the disciples of God who follow the writings and teachings of the Sikh gurus. Many Hindus believe Sikhism is to be a sect of Hinduism, but Sikhs see Sikhism as an independent religion. The Sikh place of worship is called a Gurdwara, which means the residence of the Guru, or the door that leads to the Guru. Sikhism, I find Sikhism very social justice oriented.
Yeah, I mean, I think that stems out of, if I understand correctly, there's a value of all people, right? So everybody is, similar to the idea of like everybody's equal before the law. So I think that's the root of it. And I think you add the idea of karma to that, and I think that's where you start to get around the idea of equity as opposed to equality of opportunity.
Okay, well, sorry. What do you mean by that?
So, you think of karma and the idea of like helping people who are less fortunate is good karma, right? And so by doing this through government, right, we're going to help those who are have an unequal outcome. To some extent, it's viewed with that positive karma perspective to it. So that's where I think, because, for us as Christians, we would resonate with the idea of equality before the law, right? Or equal opportunity, because they are, as Christians, right? We all are sinners, right? We're all in the same playing field. No sin makes us farther from God than another sin. Obviously, if someone wants to critique me with regards to blasphemy, okay, that's not the point I'm trying to make here. But, the idea that like we're all equal before God with regards to our sin, and nobody is better than another. So I think there's some commonality there in the way that we view people, and karma resonates with the idea of helping the poor within the Christian. It's our responsibility to take care of the widow and the poor, right? So I think there's a lot of, virtuous aspects of Sikhism.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, for example, so they have like some kind of concept of sin like we do, called the Maya 5 thieves, and basically the things that they consider sin or a no-no is ego, anger, greed, attachment, and lust. So ego, especially referring to getting the best way to get rid of your ego is to serve others. So this is what, and then of course, yeah, and so you kind of think, yeah, this kind of aligns with his political platform with the New Democratic Party, the NDP, and these are kind of consistent with what he has been preaching from his platform.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting parallel. I don't know that all Sikhs would necessarily go down that road, but I definitely see the idea of equality or being concerned with inequality resonating with at least from the things that Jagmeet Singh has said, from the little bits that I know about Sikhism.
Okay.
I definitely see a resonation between the NDP and a more socialist perspective.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
For one, he's praised a socialist dictator in Fidel Castro. I can share the tweet if listeners don't believe me.
What did he say in the tweet?
So November 26, 2016, he saw this is his Jagmeet Singh's tweet. He saw a country racked by poverty, illiteracy, and disease. So he led a revolution that uplifted the lives of millions. R.I.P. Fidel Castro. So I would take issue with many components of this tweet, but different time and a place. Right now, my point is only to identify that he's resonating with socialism.
Right. So it's not that we're just throwing names around or name calling, but yeah, he definitely is a fan of socialism.
Yeah, without going down the rabbit hole, our critique of socialism wouldn't be anywhere around the motivations, or at least for me, right? So the goals of socialism on a very surface level of, trying to help those that are at the bottom end of the inequality spectrum, or any other sort of, let's say, virtuous motives are not obviously not the aspects that we take issue with. For me, from an economics perspective, it would be that the economic system of socialism leads to a bad allocation of resources, and consequently overproduction or underproduction of the things you actually need, consequently leading to poverty as opposed to wealth.
And we have tons of examples throughout history.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the response would be, well, that's not true socialism. And this is where, without, again, going down the rabbit hole too deep, the economic principle is this economic calculation problem, as it was originally phrased for, or the socialism calculation problem that Ludwig von Mises promoted or put forth. And the idea is really that profits and prices serve as and profits and prices absent of government intervention in the first place, but profits and prices serve actually as a way to convey information, and in essence markets serve as a way of conveying information, and really a profitable market indicates that we should allocate more resources to that industry or market, and a market that is losing money or diminishing means we need to allocate resources out of that market and somewhere else. But when you have a central planning and socialism, in essence, you lack the market mechanisms to identify the reallocation of resources. Is probably the best way of thinking about it. You know, when does a market or a particular business need to realign itself with the way that the economy is moving? And when you're central planning and you don't have profit as a tool to identify changes, you lose the ability to adjust accordingly. So hopefully I've done a little bit of justice as to our concern with socialism, and we can continue evaluating the NDP and some other aspects of Sikhism.
I would also add that socialism also takes away the incentive to want to create wealth for those who are the innovators, because whatever they make will be taken away. So there's no incentive and reward in creating wealth and innovation. And on the flip side, for those people who don't want to work, there's no incentive for them to work because everything's always handed out to them. In my research, I stumbled across an article from the Vancouver Sun by columnist Douglas Todd on why Sikhs are so powerful in Canadian politics. Sikhs are the envy of other minority groups. And he was simply saying that they adapt at turning grassroots activism into serious political clout. And so when you look at their numbers in the country, there's about 500,000 of them, and they are 1% of the Canadian population. But they have a lot of political clout. And when I mean Sikhs, I mean not all Indian people are Sikhs, not all brown people or Indian people are Hindu or all are Muslim. So there is nuance to the people, and we're not going to paint everybody with a broad brush, but just particularly the Sikh faith, 500,000 of them, and they're 1% of the population. And what's interesting about that is how do they garner all that support? So the article was saying that the grassroots process typically begins with broad elections at hundreds of Canadian gurdwaras, which are like churches or temples. Especially in Vancouver suburbs such as Surrey, in neighborhoods of Calgary, and in Toronto suburbs such as Mississauga, and especially Brampton. Sikh Canadians' political power is greatest at the local party level. And so at determining who is nominated to represent ridings and in gathering bulk members up to vote for a candidate to become a provincial or national leader of a particular party. So what you see is like they got 10 to 20 individuals, mostly men, in these Gurdwaras, and they gain access to pools of money, typically religious donations made in cash. And so they're able to influence a circle of, let's say, like 40 to 50 extended families. And that group that operates a Gurdwara can effectively obtain funds and temple volunteers on behalf of their partisan favorite. So that way, they often man a table in the temple on behalf of their politician, particularly on weekends when devotees come by the hundreds.
You know, what's interesting, and I think you skipped over this part of the article, and I missed you saying it, is in essence, Sikhs are overrepresented in politics compared to the population. Now, I don't have a problem with that in and of itself, because unequal outcome is the nature of freedom. Mm-hmm. We all choose to do things according to what we're interested in.
Yeah, but also, sorry, go ahead.
Like I just want to contrast. It's like 1% versus 12%, right? Like it's a significant difference. Now, that's just so actually this is as not 12% of politicians. It says 12% of federal liberal cabinet ministers are Sikhs, which works out to 14 liberal Sikh MPs.
Okay, so political scientist Shrinder Purewal of Kwantlen Polytechnic University also points out that another little understood factor that enhances the effectiveness of many Sikh leaders is their traditional caste, says Purewal. The dominant caste among Punjabi Canadians is Jat, which is a land-owning warrior caste. He says the high status of a Jat leader makes it easier for certain politicians of Sikh faith to mobilize their relatives, extended families, and friends. As they say, money is the mother's milk of political campaigns, and temples have a lot of it, a lot of cash. So before winning the leadership of the NDP, Singh signed up an astonishing 10,000 party members in BC alone. Right? So you start to think like, this is crazy. Now, where is the hinge in which this could be where they can digress from this? So what is the hinge in which this can get better or get worse? And it hinges on, of course, their demographic age-wise. So usually the older people in the community, they're more likely to follow a particular personality because of ethnic lines or caste system or religious loyalties or family loyalties. They're more likely to vote based on what people tell them to do. But then you have the more younger Sikhs who would ask more questions of their representatives to find out what they really believe. But even then, you still have a lot of young people that still hold to social justice beliefs. So you don't really see that this political system falling apart, right? Because we always talk about like systemic and institutional systems that are set to continue. I think this is one of those.
Well, and I think, what's interesting is, the older generation is going to be drawn to the personality, as you said it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why you look at someone like Jagmeet Singh and he has a persona about him. And I think, when you talked about how he came up through the grassroots kind of a movement, had 10,000 people, right? Like he developed that following, or because his persona was something of interest to the community.
Now, the next question I got to ask is, what about black people? Or probably some of our listeners are probably thinking that. But, like, how do the Sikhs have so much power and making moves politically while, as black people, we stay hashtagging and holding up traffic? You know, we're always comparing ourselves to the Jews and to the Asians. Look at the Asians. Look at the Jews. Look how they do this. Look how they do that. My answer to that is the reason why black people don't do as well as Sikhs is because Sikhs are unified by something deeper than their skin color. They got the turban, the beard, the kirpan, and their book that unifies them. Sikhism is the religion and Punjabi is their ethnicity. Skin color is not the zero sum of who they are, nor is it the zero sum of who black people are. Ethnicities vary as well as religious beliefs within a community. It is irrational and a false hope to believe that one could achieve equality of outcome from such diversity.
Well, and I'm curious, I swear, I could be picking the wrong ethnicity, but I feel like you always tell me there's like a couple ethnicities that like within the black community that go hard. And like I'm thinking of like, I don't know why I keep thinking like Nigerian.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've said a couple others where like they do really, really well.
Right.
Almost as an outlier.
Right. And just like there are, in other ethnicities, with people with the same complexion, that do better than others. When it comes to culture is not that culture doesn't come within a vacuum. It doesn't just happen in and of itself. It's not random, but cultures are made up of artifacts, and the artifacts determine how a person lives. So when I mean an artifact, I'm talking about, some cultures are really good at soccer, right? And that artifact that they have is a soccer ball, or they might have a field, or hockey. You might have, it's really cold outside. You have a lot of, you have ponds that freeze over. And so, certain cultures might be better at hockey, or you have cultures that have particular tools, particular vegetation, animals, different types of cooking styles. So these are artifacts that impact the way we move. So nobody is just randomly moving and everybody moves the same way. We have access to different types of artifacts which determine the way we live. And one of the major or the greatest artifact we have culturally is literature, is books. That's why you can see the Jews from the time they became God's people and the Ten Commandments are written and they were given that artifact. They lived differently than everybody else. You have Muslims who have the Quran and they live differently, right? And books are culture changers. And so people that have a book and are governed by a book, they live differently and they also live cohesively. Yeah, so they basically agree on the major tenets of the faith. And so that's why I make that point that, yeah, not everybody's the same, nor should we expect them to be the same, because everybody has access to different types of artifacts that influence their culture. But with that said, I want to reference episode 35, Church and State. So it's funny because in episode 35, we talked about what is church and state. But in this episode, we're talking about religion and politics. And, religion and politics and the crossover philosophically between the two. And so I was arguing from that episode that religion is a belief that unites people and a belief that people are devoted to. It doesn't necessarily have to point to a deity, but people usually make a deity out of a belief and they follow it without compromise. That's how people are coming together with one belief. And that's how I was defining religion. And that's how it kind of crosses over into politics, where people have these non-negotiable beliefs that they hold to and will not compromise on, and sometimes get violent against if anybody pushes back against that.
Well, and I think the idea of getting violent is something that...
it's devotional.
It's
passion.
It's deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but the problem is like it's a whole different ball game. Go back to the last episode with Don Cherry, right? And the concern is not the particular ideas that he said. It's adding extremism or those that already don't like minorities. And somehow you're fueling, because he's critical of minorities, arguably, again, I think there's a bit of conversation there, as we discussed last episode, but arguably, he's going after, or he's critical of minorities, and now extremism is going to take that critique and result in something bad. Like, I think there was something I saw, with like a tagging or some sort of vandalism. The problem is,
Oh, ye have left the
that's
faith,
not,
or ye left the faith, referencing the Flanders Field poem where it talks about ye in the faith, and then the guy spray painted the monument to show that, well, no, you guys have left the faith. The fact that you're not backing up Don Cherry. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
but the point is, like, that requires a different idea, right? That requires
Conviction.
No, it requires willingness to violate another person's property. And that is what extremism encompasses.
Yeah, but
And the problem is,
yeah, well, you
when
got to be careful with the
try
extremism, though. You got to be careful with the extremism because, like, part of it is.
But I'm just saying extremism in general.
Yeah, well, I guess, well, what people call, violent Muslims extremists, when technically they're not extremists. They're conservatives. They're following what the scriptures say.
Yeah, and so that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, but
that's
no,
a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
But-
I'm arguing that people, when it comes to the thing that religion and politics have in common, is hope. And people go to drastic measures when their hope is being threatened. So people have their hope in different things, bro. Right? Some people might have their hope in multiculturalism, and some people might have their hope in, conservative thought or even libertarian thought.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is to go to the place, like, I guess the reason I was bringing it up is when it comes to ideas, right? If you're concerned about someone's ideas, like using the Don Cherry example, that idea in and of itself had no call for violence, had no call for violating someone's property. It had if anything, it had a call to positive action, which was to support the troops. Mm-hmm. But what I'm trying to get at is that if you're willing to violate someone else's property, other than in self-defense, you have to own that regardless of the underlying ideas that are criticizing one person or another. So the problem I'm trying to get at is that, like, with regards to the Don Cherry thing, and I think it's relevant here, is that because the reason I think it's relevant is because to some extent we started with a clip that was contrasting the Sikh religion with the Christian religion or the Christian faith. And coming back to what I was bringing up with regards to Don Cherry is really we're talking about ideas. Don Cherry had a claim, and the concern is that we, like, from a public outcry, is that we don't want to allow words or speech that explicitly or implicitly lead to violence, or in this case, leads to violating someone else's property. The problem with that is that it is so subjective. It is so dangerous because whoever's in control determines what implicitly leads to violence, right? And the way this looks is Communist China doesn't allow you to speak against the regime. Oh, we got to stomp at that speech. It's dangerous. And so, the reason I want to go down this rabbit hole a little bit is to say, like, what are we doing here with this clip? Like, are we trying to say that this one particular belief system is better than another? And I mean, that's what we obviously believe with respect to our individual lifestyle choices. But in this regard, tolerance is about living peacefully with those who hold a completely different view. And let's, use it in an extreme perspective, living in tolerance with those who might even deem the way that you live to be immoral or sinful, and vice versa, right? So, the predicament is for society is how do we let the person who, let's say, wants to have 7 wives live in community with those that don't want to live that lifestyle. Well, that's how, you end up with random places in the U.S. where polygamy is its own thing. And it's kind of within its own little communities, because some aspects of being tolerant towards other people is being like, I got to leave you alone. And it all comes down to what I was trying to get before. Like, as long as you're not bringing violence, as long as you're not willing to cross that line of violating another person's property, I don't care what you believe. Believe whatever you want to believe. Like, I'm tolerant. You can believe whatever you want. You start violating my property and my family or my personhood, different conversation. And so that's where, why I bring up the Don Cherry example, because what Don Cherry said in and of itself did not call for violence. Somebody took it and decided to violate another person's property with it. Okay, guess what? I have a problem with that. And we all should. But being concerned that a particular statement is and as I put it, because I was critical towards one group of people, right? The fact that someone might take that to now, I'm going to take that criticism to violence, is something that is in and of itself different. I would say look at Jagmeet Singh. Based on everything he said, if you took something he said, with respect to, let's say, when he called out the PPC as to like being a dangerous ideology, well, I would hope that
the PPC,
if somebody...
PPC, define PPC for those who don't know.
Oh, the People's Party of Canada was another party within the Canadian election, and they were looking... one of their big platforms was to reduce or at least have a conversation. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. They wanted to have a conversation around what was the right level of immigration. But Jagmeet Singh called him dangerous. Now, what if someone took that and then decided to be violent towards a PPC candidate or defame a PPC candidate's poster?
Yeah, but that's my whole argument.
Those are things...
That's right. Yeah, and that's what I'm arguing against. That, it's a matter of hope, and some people have their hope in the wrong things. And I think when it comes to religion, and that's why I use the term. That's how I was defining religion, as that thing that people put their hope in, and their life revolves around that particular conviction. Like, yeah, you might not like the fact that the guy, defaced the monument, but part of his hope was being threatened. And when people's hope is being threatened, people lash out and they do aggressive things. And that's why, like, when we talk about, like, a person's politics or a person's religion, and religion and politics have to be separate. Well, no, they're not separate. I would say there's points where there is crossover, and then there's points where they're separate. So, like, for example, Islam does not separate church and state. They don't separate their religion from their politics. Those things are one, because the goal, according to their book, is global domination, to bring everybody in submission to Allah. You see
Would
that?
you say that the Jews are very much the same?
The Jews...
Not so much in motivation, but in terms of separation of church and state concept. I think those, like,
unlike
Jewish religion...
unlike they're not like Muslims.
I'm saying that
So
they are like Muslims in that their religion and their politics blend. And I'm more contrasting it with Christianity.
yeah, and even like the Sikhs, right? Even so, like when you like look at Sikhs, because Sikhs believe salvation is found here, and that it's all about equality. So, what's the best way to bring about equality? Well, through the political system. So, they mobilize together, and I'm sure that all of their intentions are great intentions to help the people and make the world a better place. And that's why they have such a complex functional structure that they have politically to be able to, have such, minimum people, but wield so much power. And so that's why I was saying, like, the religion and politics, there is overlap, and you don't separate the two. So like I said before, episode 35, we talked about church and state, meaning that the church and state should be separate, right? Because church and state has to do with the institutions, right? So the church shouldn't be wielding the sword and executing justice, and the state shouldn't be funding the church diaconate fund. Church and state are separate. But when it comes to religion and politics, that has to deal with the individual and philosophies, and there's overlap there. The reason why people want to separate religion and politics is because they don't want to be forced to believe something they don't want to believe. But that's what you get with democracy. People are always forced. That's the nature of democracy. We're always forced to believe and
That's the
embrace
nature
stuff.
of government.
Right. So
It's a monopoly on force.
Right.
As much as a lot of people don't like me saying that.
yes, but what I'm saying is that, but people will say, okay, well, no, that's religion and politics. No, that's not religion and politics. That's the government. That's democracy. So we want to make sure that we're dispelling these myths that say, okay, well, you can't be a religious person and be in the political system. That's not true.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, the way I closed out that show, episode 35, I would probably, I'm having a bit of deja vu to just saying that for those that think only Christians have a religion, or that church and state means, explicit religion only, the predicament is, you have a belief system. Everyone has a belief system. And to pretend like your belief system isn't going to influence your politics, I mean, it can come down to the simplest of things, right? With regards to, how much should someone help the poor? Well, that's a belief system. You may have as a Christian, I determine what is moral in regards to helping the poor based on the Bible. You might determine what's moral with regards to helping the poor based on life experience. And the only reason I bring that up is to say that, this idea of separation of church and state with regards to we shouldn't be having any, religious influence on our politics, in essence is ignorant to the fact that we all have a belief system. We all have a source of morality, some of them more objective than others. And as a result, for the most part, religion and belief system influences the laws and the politics. And I would challenge someone who's really like, but church and state need to be separated. You need to look at the origins, because really the origin was getting King George away from the pulpit.
Right.
Not the pulpit away from influencing how King George is going to rule.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my 2 cents. I feel like I totally had a bit of deja vu as I was thinking through what I was going to say. So hopefully it's not so much in the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So I'd like to leave the listener with this: that all religions of the book have the same dilemma or the same problem. You have people who read the book and people who don't. The people who read the book and try to conserve the faith or the teachings of their book are called conservatives. The people who try to depart or liberate themselves from the dogma are called liberals. So therefore we have religious liberals and religious conservatives. And so those people who are submitted to their text and make decisions based on their text when it comes to how they live out their life in society, that includes just, your everyday going to work and helping out your neighbor. And also that also includes your civic duty of voting. So we see that particular camp of conservatives. But then you have people who are liberal, who are nominal, meaning that in name they are Christian, or in name they're Muslim, or in name they're Sikh, but they are nominal. They're liberal, departing from those teachings and using the common beliefs of the day, or the most popular hashtags or political system that's popular. That's what they're submitting themselves to. So it's always important to make sure that we're nuanced in the conversation when we say, okay, well, you're a Christian, and according to your scriptures, it teaches this. So why are you voting this way? And now for those who say that brown people can't have privilege, only white people can, I say come to Brampton. The Indian community is doing well for themselves here in creating their own culture of privilege. Community privilege is about population. The majority will always have more privilege than the minority. Privileges meaning familiarity and accommodation. Economically speaking, there is no incentive for a majority to give up an absolute comfort to the minority for an absolute discomfort. If you're uncomfortable in the community you're in, leave it. Go to a community where you'd be more comfortable. Like I said, community privilege is a good. Familiarity and accommodation. The Bible says every good and perfect gift comes from God. James chapter 1, verse 17. God in his wisdom gives gifts disproportionately. Like it or not, at one time in history, the Jews were the only ones who had access to the one true God. What shall we say then? God is unjust? Because there's an equality in the world? Stop the nonsense. In all Job's affliction, his wife said to him, "Are you still trying to maintain your integrity? Curse God and die." But Job replied, "You talk like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad?" Job chapter 2, verse 9 to 10. When we look at a biblical theology, which is the unfolding of the story of God's plan to redeem his people from sin, we learn that there was no material and role equality in the Garden of Eden before sin entered the creation, and there will be no material or role equality after sin in the new heavens and the new earth. Now, the Bible does not teach fatalism, to just accept your fate, but God encourages everyone to improve their situation through innovation without sin, as commanded in the cultural mandate, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 28, and then Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. Now, the reason why Christians don't do as well as Sikhs in the political system is because King Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world," and he gave us a different commission. The first Great Commission, the cultural mandate, to promote human flourishing, and the second Great Commission, to make disciples of all nations. Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. Christians can accomplish these two commissions without the government. God created the institution of the government in Genesis chapter 9, verses 5 to 6, to give the people order, and God created the institution of the church to give the people a hope. Matthew 16, verse 18. Christians must remember never to confuse the two institutions. And that's my 2 cents.
Amen, brother.
6 cents fellowship. Yeah. So guys, if you guys, we want to hear from you guys. Let us know what you think.
And let us know an issue you want us to tackle, or a topic that's of interest. We're pretty good at when someone throws something at us. If we generally know how to make a show out of it, we can just spitball and come up with an idea. So, we obviously want to talk about the things the listeners want to hear about. So, give us your 2 cents.
Remember, 6 cents makes change.
But you heard me? Does that make sense?